It's a Friday edition of Card Central 365, powered by Gray Bar here on STL Sports Central. No Ryan Fagan today, but Brenden Schaeffer is in for him. And Brenden, huge news. The Cardinals are calling up from Memphis, not JJ Wetherholt.
Yeah, it's not JJ Wetherholt. It's a couple of his teammates, it seems, reported by both Derek Gould and Katie Woo. Cesar Prieto and Jimmy Crooks are on the way to join the Cardinals at the big league level, which is, it's not a September call-up just yet, but, a couple of days away. We assume, though, some corresponding moves will come with this. Now, Katie Woo reporting that Alec Burleson will go on the injured list, 10-day IL with a wrist injury. The other move, not official, not known yet, but I look at it and say, all right, if Prieto is on the way, this was something that had been reported as early as last night. We do know that Masyn Winn has been dealing with his knee issue, Joe, and I'd love to see him get to play long enough so that the powers that be decide he is worthy of the Gold Glove, because, my goodness, he does deserve it. But if that happens to be the corresponding move for one of these guys, it could be maybe the last we would see of Masyn Winn in 2025. So we're waiting on the news to become official, but those are kind of the things we're looking at, I think, right now.
I'm hearing Masyn Winn. That's what I've been told. So he fought through it for a while. I think this is a move that the Cardinals easily could have made a week ago with putting Masyn Winn on the IL. We saw him miss time over the last weekend because of it, and he has gone out there. And I'm trying to think back to the games I've seen this week, if there's been anything that, like, you kind of look out there at Masyn Winn, you're like, man, that's a guy that's really laboring out there. I'm sure there are things here and there, I'm sure he isn't as fast, and there's some things that are hurting on him, but for the most part, I don't think his play has been affected at all. But I do think that you have to kind of look at things long term, and you have to go, God, you know what, for the betterment of my career, maybe it's best to take a step back during this season and not keep pushing.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me, and again, not confirmed yet with Masyn Winn. It would make sense with the Prieto news being something they knew about last night, knowing that this is a road trip as well. That's normally a time where, when you're trying to push through something, you go from home to on the road. Oftentimes, that is when we see those moves, because why make a guy travel if it's not going to be productive for him? But if that is the case with Masyn Winn being one of these corresponding moves, you're right. Like, it reminds me of Brendan Donovan when he had his procedure to repair the UCL, I believe is ultimately what that ended up being. They said forearm for a while, but I think that's what it was. And they shut him down around August. They tried to DH him for a while of that season, and it just, eventually you go, this isn't worth it. Let's get any procedure, any cleanup that needs to happen. Let's do it on the front end so that when you come into spring training, you're another month, more repaired. You're another month better into a rehab, whatever that may need to look like for Masyn Winn. We can't really know for sure and speculate, but we know the knee has been bothering him for a while. I can think weeks ago, seeing him kind of make a play, diving at shortstop and getting up, and just kind of, you could see him trying to stretch out that knee, and it just never, I don't think, got comfortable for him again. So I would not be surprised either, Joe, if that is what happens here. And then you kind of turn the page. The Burleson thing, again, it's kind of that time of the year where the Cardinals are out of it, and you have a nagging injury that you've been trying to play through, and it just gets to a point where the juice is no longer worth the squeeze. Do we see Burleson again in 2025 if he's going on the IL today? These are questions that I think are pretty reasonable as the Cardinals season winds down about a month to go.
Great prep work on my side of things on this. Did they say what the Burleson injury was?
Katie reported it as a wrist, and I don't think anything of what we're talking about has been made official by the team just yet. I'll check my phone, but I haven't seen anything from.
No, nothing's come across from the actual Cardinals. No.
Yeah, so I think that is, that's kind of where we are. Is you can pretty reliably trust that these two moves are happening. That, with Katie Woo reporting it, that Burley will be one of those, and that's a bummer too, because I mean, he had one of the more productive seasons among Cardinal hitters, had been a staple in the middle of the order. We know Burleson is in the mix, though, in 2026. Like, he would be a guy, I'd be very surprised to see the Cardinals trade him. There are a lot of guys that could be on the move in theory. I don't think many will be, but a couple will be. And I just don't think Burleson is somebody that's on that list. So you can pencil him into a daily lineup spot for next year. In this next month, see some players that we really don't know if you can pencil in, if there's an upside to what's happening today.
Insiders coming from the comment section here, Brenden. Somebody's saying they're hearing there's an injury with Pozo.
Maybe
So
there is. I mean, here's the thing. And look, as much as we laugh, the Mason Wynn really does want to play through. By now, whether he is on the road trip or isn't will have already been determined, right? They left. And so that part probably wouldn't change. But if there was something that had happened to a catcher, wouldn't be crazy to then say, oh, by the way, we're going to need Crooks as well. But because Prieto was reported last night, makes me think that part of it was pretty set in stone. But then maybe did the Burleson thing pop up and they go, oh, okay, we were on the fence about what we were going to do. And now Crooks is somebody that makes sense if there's Burleson plus Pozo. You know what I'm saying? Who knows? It's hard to speculate, but I would say that we can trust what's been reported about the two players coming up and Burley being one of the two corresponding moves. The other, Win would make sense. If there's something happening to a catcher, it would make sense. I don't worry about it if it is, hey, Pozo's healthy, Pages is healthy, and Crooks is just coming along for the ride. Crooks, to me, benefits more over the next 3 weeks between Memphis goes until like the 21st. I think there's one more week that St. Louis would be playing. I think Jimmy Crooks gets more out of being around the big league environment, whether he's an everyday player or not, than he gets from playing for 3 more weeks in Memphis. I think get him around the team. He's got to be put on the 40-man in the offseason. And that's a guy that, frankly, has to be coming into spring training with a chip on his shoulder, ready to win a job, whether it's a starting role or a backup one. They've got a lot of catchers that they have to sort through. I don't know that all of them are going to be here at this time a year from now. Crooks is one, though, that if he's on the 40-man, he has to be a legitimate option to join the big league club by opening day 2026. Otherwise, ask yourself what you're doing with this player and if he could be a trade piece in the winter.
Katie Wu 30 minutes ago did tweet out that it is Pozo and Burleson that are going on the IL.
Okay.
So again, that's maybe something else is coming as well when they continue to look at what's going on with Mason Wynn with that. And that also could be a case. It should be noted today is August 29th. Monday is September 1st. We're talking about the September call-ups, and what you just said about Jimmy Crooks being around the team, being a part of the team, I think has been said time and time again about JJ Wetherholt. I think as you and I sit here right now, which I want to get back to the Burleson stuff too in a bit, but because you mentioned, I think it's you said, what was it, that he should be penciled in as an everyday guy for 2026. Yeah. I thought that was the case going into 2025. And I feel like he was fighting for his job in spring training. Yeah. I feel like he had to win that job in spring training when he should have just been, hey, you're here. We're not sure if it's going to be first base, left field, DH. We're not sure where it's going to be. You're in this lineup. And it felt like he had to fight his ass off to earn that spot.
He did, but we can pretty easily identify why that happened. The Cardinals go to their veterans and say, do any of you want to be traded? And Wilson Contreras is like, no, I will die here on this field. Like, he doesn't want to leave St. Louis. Okay, can you move to first base? Sure. All right, we need one. Let's just go ahead and call that good. All right. You mentioned DH, like Ivan Herrera, not a catcher. He's a pretty good hitter. Got to put him somewhere. Okay.
He wasn't the DH though in spring, though.
Not in spring, but you also had at the time Jordan Walker and Nolan Gorman that you're trying to force feed. And, oh, by the way, you couldn't trade Arenado. I think Walker is the obvious one where it's like, okay, at the time he was being prioritized as a runway player that needs to be seen. Whereas I think especially early, Oli Marmol knew what he believed about Alec Burleson. And if he wasn't going to be every single day, that wasn't going to change the eventual role. But it was kind of like, we got to force feed some Jordan Walker and see what we've got here. The returns on that have not been consistent enough to then say for next year, like, how many years do we do it where we say this guy is prioritized based on he was drafted higher in the same draft class, by the way, Burleson and Walker. Burleson at this point has done it for another year where his production is the consistent factor. And so you do have to consider him penciled in. But what does that mean? Chaim Bloom has to trade somebody. And I'm not saying that's an easy task. It's clearly one that John Mozeliak just couldn't figure out a way to do, or didn't have the willingness to do it because didn't feel like the return was going to be what the Cardinals deserve for those players. But that's where I think a guy like Lars Nootbaar is now much more under the microscope going into the winter for a potential move than he would have been a year ago at this time. And Burleson is one that you kind of say, we're going to build some stuff around Burleson if we believe what we've seen from his bat is legit, which is an upper 700s to a low 800s OPS and pretty good on base skills, pretty good strikeout. He doesn't do it. He doesn't strike out. He's bat to ball. So they like a lot about his game. And this was runway year. Next year, I've begun to say it needs to be the installation of what the real offense is going to be. And that means, like, all right, you've seen what you've seen out of Lars Nootbaar. Make a choice. Does that apply to Jordan Walker as well? Those are sort of the things that have to happen. I know you're not a big Lars Nootbaar guy. Jerry's saying, hey, Marmol gave him too much time. I don't agree with that because I would say that you can trade Newt in the offseason. If you're going to trade him, that's a fine thing to do. Exploring everything about Lars Nootbaar in 2025 before you trade him feels appropriate because you're not trading Burleson. They believe in Burleson from top to bottom in the org. At least I think so. I mean, he feels like a Chaim Bloom guy as well. So it just stylistically to the way that he plays the game. And so I feel like exploring more about Nootbaar before you have to decide sink or swim, trade or don't, was very appropriate for 2025.
Yeah, and you do have Nathan Church now. Victor Scott has proven to be a major league player all season, especially with the glove out there in center field. So we've seen, I think, enough to where you would be comfortable moving on from Lars Nootbaar. Back to my point with Weatherholt and what you said about Crooks. Just calling Crooks up here, giving him time in the major league dugout in the locker room, and just letting him take it all in. I think that's been said many times about Weatherholt here in this final month of the season. And I think you look back at how they handled Mason Wynn when they called up Mason Wynn for that final month, that final 45 days of the season. And they just said, hey, you know what? You're going to bat ninth and you're just going to go out there and you're going to play short every day. And we'll figure it out as we go. And it wasn't great. Nobody was calling him, the next great shortstop in Major League history after that. But I think you saw that he went into spring training with confidence. He started the next year with that confidence that then boosted him up to being able to lead off all of 2024. And I think you see the way that he was handled. And then let's go back and let's look at how Jordan Walker was handled, where Jordan Walker earned his spot on opening day. Same could be said with Victor Scott kind of earning a spot on opening day last year, not having that major league experience beforehand, and then struggled mightily in April with that. So I think doing something like that for Weatherholt at the end of the season at least gets him in the dugout and at least prepares him for that next season, because I think you and I don't want to speak for you, but I would think that you and I both would agree that JJ Wetherholt probably is going to be in the starting lineup opening day of 2026 if by how he's performed this year at AAA.
As long as Chaim Bloom can make a few moves in the winter to clear some space for that to be the case. I'm talking about Arenado. I'm talking about a decision point on Gorman in his future versus, second base. Is that Donovan? Does Donovan move to left field when you trade Nootbaar? Like, those are sort of, where's Walker? It all connects. Generally, I'm going to agree with that point that Weatherholt is in your opening day lineup in 2026. I want to not push back. I want to clarify. I don't think Crooks and Weatherholt and Wynn are all the same. I think that Weatherholt is more similar to Wynn, where if you call him up in September, I do think he should play every single day, because that's kind of what Wynn got in 2023, right? He got the runway to play in a meaningless September, hit 150, but it didn't matter because they didn't add a single soul to compete with him at shortstop. That's including Brandon Crawford. They just added him as insurance once Mason had some back issues the next spring. They saw Mason Wynn hit 170 in September, and they still said he's going to be our shortstop. Like, there's no question about that. He's our guy next year. They had a lot of faith in him, and that was cool to see, and they ended up being right that he was going to be just fine offensively. I think for Weatherholt, that's what you would need, is if you're going to call him up, play him every single day. I don't know if there's a spot to do that, especially if Arenado comes back. I've been skeptical since the beginning about the Arenado stuff of, like, he's going to go to Jupiter to do what now? Oh, because his shoulder. Dude, if my shoulder, I've got, my elbow kind of hurts. Can I just go hang out in Jupiter too? That's not saying he's not working hard to get back, but does it make sense to push him and force him back? Not really. It makes sense for him to hang out in Jupiter and just kind of not have it be awkward. not have him be around if they are going to move on from him in the winter, which frankly they have to do. I know that people in the know have reported they're not just going to eat the money. Time will tell on that. I think it just doesn't make sense for Arenado to be your third baseman next year, considering Gorman is performing well. You're not going to move Gorman if you think he's legit for the next 2 or 3 years just because Arenado you're paying him. That's ridiculous. Weatherholt is legit. You're not going to keep Arenado. Like the new front office cannot afford to act that way. That's how Mozeliak's front office would act. So I understand it's been reported. I am saying I'll believe when I see it that Arenado is at third base on opening day next year. It just makes zero sense. But real quick, I know I've been going long. The Crooks part of it, the Crooks part is comparable in that being around the environment can help him propel into a role that he frankly needs to have next year if his spot on the 40-man is going to make any sense. Because you can't tell me there's a crunch with the 40-man and then stash 4 catchers, and I'm not counting Wilson or Herrera among the 4. I just don't think that makes sense. So you have him around, but he can play every other day relative to Pages. Now that we know it's Pozo, and look, Pozo's got a concussion, is what Katie reported. That's a 7-day IL, so he can come back even a little bit more quickly. That's fine. Keep Crooks around when Pozo comes back. Let him soak it up. He can play twice a week, 3 times a week. That's more acceptable, I think, for a catcher because he could learn more by watching how Pages game plans, watching how these guys treat being a big league catcher. He can do more by watching than I think a Weatherholt really can. Weatherholt, we just need to see get the reps and face big league pitching because that's what it's more about for him, is kind of the distinction I would draw there. But I agree. Weatherholt and and Crooks should be on this team in September, in my opinion. It's just tougher with Weatherholt because of the clog that exists there. But if Donovan doesn't come back, suddenly you're like, wait a minute, there's not really as big of a clog as there was. Go ahead and throw JJ in there every day at second base if you have to. So JC's been fine, but like that's what I would be looking for with Weatherholt.
And right now, we don't know when Brendan Donovan's coming back. I know that Ali talked to the media about him on Wednesday, saying that I don't know if setback is the right word. I think more so they said he's not progressing to the point where they would want him to, and that he hasn't even seen live pitching yet. It's just been cage work for him so far. I mean, so it could be another week or 2 before we even see Brendan Donovan. So I mean, second base
and we
is
may
even
not
an
see
option
him.
with that. And yeah,
we
and
may not see him.
With it being the injury that it is for Donovan, that's another. You don't want to put him out in left field anymore this year. There's no reason to do that anymore this year too. So I think it's, again, if he can't come back and play, it sucks that the second time it's happened in his career that he has to get shut down at the end of the year. But it's something you just have to kind of do for next year, I guess.
And this one wouldn't be a major surgery. Like if he's got a groin that he's kind of close to playing and coming back from, don't push it in the final month of a season that's lost when you could really be evaluating some of these other guys. And at that point, the only reason, like let's say they find out it is going to be maybe 3 weeks for Donovan. Okay, then just shut him down and get him healed up for next year. If it is going to be 3 weeks for Burleson, okay, Arenado, okay. Like you're getting to the point where if it doesn't happen within the next 10 days, just shut the guy down, because what's the point in taking the additional risk of making something worse that does impact you come February? I think that's true of a lot of these guys that are starting to filter into the injured list. And the one that still hasn't apparently is Mason Wynn. And so that's also another one that when you get a little bit closer to the end, he could be a premature shutdown just to give him that extra couple of weeks if it no longer is worth it to play through. And then the ancillary benefits of some of this stuff is not only Crooks getting some big league time and getting the experience. Cesar Prieto is like a guy that has been a good soldier in the organization. He's got solid numbers in AAA. They don't think much of him as a fielder, but he's a bit versatile. Like those are the types of guys like a Nathan Church that you should probably get a look at before you decide that, hey, that guy's gonna be somebody we just can't have on the 40-man long term, because we do have a bit of a crunch that we're worried about with all of the AA players that are going to have to enter the 40-man roster this winter to be protected from Rule 5. I like giving those guys a little bit of run, and to me, they're an upgrade over a couple of years ago. You had like Irving, Lopez, and Caracudo, some guys that people don't even remember actually played for the Cardinals in September. Like a Cesar Prieto has been around since coming over in that trade deadline 2 years ago. Get a look at him. I'm not predicting he's going to be a long-term fixture, but what if he does show you something that tells you, okay, let's reconsider just dismissing him as as depth fodder, as quad A fodder. Give those guys a look before you make that decision, like they sort of did with Luke and Baker as an example. There's more of those to come. And Chaim Bloom should get every opportunity to see these guys a little bit before having to part with them potentially from the organization.
Yeah, it's just another guy. Just see what you have there. Who was the guy I liked a lot in spring training that I don't even think's on the team anymore? Yeah.
Oh no.
Barrero. That's
Jose Barrero. Yeah. Well, this guy, he had an imposing figure about him. And that Cuban restaurant next to the facility down there in Jupiter. It's funny to think back. There was one time, like the day I was leaving town, I'm like, I got to go back to the Cuban place one more time. I'm sitting there on the patio, and to my left over here is Barrero just eating by himself. To my right is Prieto eating with his family. And so I'm like, these guys are going to be playing a role this year, even though I didn't really think that. But ultimately, Prieto is going to get his chance now after Barrero, he kind of flamed out early.
That tells you how good that Cuban place is too.
It's literally so good. It's a story my wife loves to tell. That it's the time that
you got two Yachty Cuban baseball players that are eating at a Cuban restaurant. I mean, it's good. It's authentic. Well,
But used to be Yachty would hold court there, right? It's that would be one of the spots he would go. And there was a time where I told my wife's first time at spring training, and I'm like, oh, you've got to try this Cuban place. And so we go there. And I'm like, it was kind of that year where we weren't really supposed to be doing dining, social distancing and stuff. And so I'm like, it's outdoors. It'll be fine. They're not even letting us in the facility anyway. And so we go there and, pick a table way far away. But as I round the corner, I see Yachty with a bunch of, other players from the Marlins and stuff. And I'm thinking, oh gosh, like this is going to be one of those ordeals. And so just didn't say anything. As we got up to leave, I kind of looked in his direction and he was staring me down. Like, I think he's one of those media guys, and just sort of nodded his head and I nodded mine. And that was that. We're like, nobody's going to find out that we were kind of social distancing, not social distancing, outdoor eating at the time. Long story short, go to the Cuban place if you ever are in Jupiter. It is one of the best restaurants down there.
Not the most shocking Yachty COVID related story that's out there, but
that's fine. It was 5 years ago. It feels like a former lifetime. Right. I feel like I can share the story now. It is what it is.
Okay. I truly believe, and I said this, I think looking at the calendar, I kind of said that it wasn't going to happen until the Giants series. I've been told by multiple people, don't expect Weatherholt up at all this season.
I think that's probably right.
So, but next week you have, it's again, they're not going to do it on the road. They're not going to call him up when they're on the road. I think if they're going to call him up at this point, it's going to be at home. Is there a percentage that you would put on the chances that he is up next week when September hits?
5 to 10%.
That low?
Yeah, and Mike, maybe I'm just being ultra conservative because of my belief that the 40-man is going to be the crux. It's going to be the thing that they use as to why not to do it. And you're like, oh my gosh, I could find a dozen guys that probably aren't here next year from that 40-man. That's probably true. And look, I think it's a mistake. And I think the reason is a mistake. I also think the complicating factor is John Mozeliak is just not going to do anything that makes a decision for Chaim Bloom. It's dumb that John Mozeliak is still running the team. There's no reason that he would be in the driver's seat on any of these decisions anymore. And look, I believe
God forbid they sit down and have a conversation about it and make a decision together. That's like we are not hearing anything from Chaim Bloom. Like, we're not hearing anything. Nobody is. So that's what we have to go off of, and that's what we have to comment on. So that's why we're saying what we're saying.
I get it. My thought would be like, I'm gonna go out on a limb here. Of course they're having conversations. For example, if they're not, how does the decision of Russ Steinhorn getting let go as the minor league hitting coordinator within the past few days happen? That doesn't happen unless Chaim Bloom is starting to be able to put his pieces in place. I'm sure he's got a guy that he's looking to have installed into that role and put in a philosophy that he is in line with, right? Chaim Bloom, Rob Strafolio, those guys are the two really running the thing right now. So they're going to let those sort of things happen. But from like a 40-man perspective, when they didn't clear they didn't trade a Newt Bar for a younger prospect that didn't need to be on the 40. They didn't do something like that in July. And so it's a benefit and a curse that Chaim Bloom has maximum flexibility with the decisions that he needs to make. It's a benefit because anything could be possible. It's a bit of a curse because you're asking him to do a lot of different things in one winter to give this organization the refresh that it desperately needs. It has been neglected. The 40-man usage has been absurd. You're looking at guys that are on the back end of the 40 that can't help you at the big league level, but you also don't feel like you can let them go because, oh my gosh, we can't let guys go for nothing. They have to make drastic turnover happen in this area. I just think the Weatherholt thing is, if they know for sure he's starting day one of 2026, like they did with Mason Wynn 2 years ago, you call him up now, easy breezy. But they can't know that for sure because those conversations about, hey, if nobody wants Arenado, are we willing to just DFA him and eat the money? Those conversations have, I'm sure, not happened to the level that they would need to go, okay, I can earmark a spot for Weatherholt. Hey, can we trade Gorman? Does he have real value if we don't decide he's got a spot? Same with Newt Bar, because like one of those guys could be traded and the other could play. If it's Newt Bar, okay, Donnie can move to left. If it's Gorman, okay, Newt Bar can maybe occupy an outfield spot a little bit more readily. With all of those questions still hanging over this front office and the next one, that's why they don't do the Weatherholt thing. I would say have a little fun with it and understand that, yes, Mo and Chaim could have a conversation. Chaim could look at what JJ has done in AAA and say, yeah, this guy's our future. I'm going to find a way to get him in there next year. Go ahead and bring him up. I give you the okay. I assume that hasn't happened. And if it doesn't, then that's why Mo isn't going to hamstring the next guy. I just wish they would be a little bit less conservative and go, we'll figure out a way. Like, we're going to find a way to do this, because holding Weatherholt back and manipulating service time is not something that makes sense in the current era, where you get a draft pick if he is a legit rookie of the year guy and you bring him up from the start of April. So that's my long-winded explanation. I'm with you. They should do it, but I'm still like a 10% chance they do. That's even including the chance that Wynn eventually needs to be shut down. But if that part happens, Joe, it's like there is so many ways to get a Weatherholt in the lineup down the stretch that I'll at least say it's like a 10%. But man, it just feels like they'll do it kicking and screaming if they do it. They're very reluctant to make that move and complicate matters for the next guy.
Card Central 365, brought to you each and every day by Gray Bar, your distributor for electrical and datacom needs. Visit graybar.com to start an order today. Graybar.com, and fix those supply chain issues with Gray Bar. Also, all content on STL Sports Central is brought to you by DraftKings. This weekend, you're going to be sitting there in front of the TV, watching football, watching baseball, and just all weekend long. Fire up that Pick Six app and pick more or less on stats for two or more of your favorite players. Boom, you're in the mix for big cash prizes. Pick Six also available right here in Missouri. Download the DraftKings Pick Six app and use code STL Sports. That's code STL Sports for new customers to get $25 in bonus picks with their first deposit of $5. Better payouts, bigger wins, only with Pick Six from DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org in Connecticut. Must be 18 and over. Age and eligibility restrictions vary by jurisdiction. Pick Six not available everywhere, including New York and Ontario. Void where prohibited. One per new customer. Bonus awarded as non-withdrawable Pick Six credits that expire in 14 days. Limited time offer. See terms at picksix.draftkings.com/promos.
Wrapping up another edition of Card Central 365. We talked about the moves that have been made at length, talked a lot about JJ Wetherholt and just kind of a look ahead to 2026. But the Cardinals do have baseball this weekend in Cincinnati against the Reds. For those that are sicker than me, they might say that it's a last chance to find themselves into a playoff race with a sweep of the Reds. I'm out on that. I'm out of that game. I'm out. The sweep to the Yankees got me out of the cards for wild card business.
Is that the meme, is that Kevin Durant like in a hospital bed or something? Is that the player where they say, you've got to be sick? And then it says me, and it's Kevin Durant up to like an IV fluid or something.
Yes.
That's the way. If you're still holding out hope, I kind of give Stefan a little trouble, and because he brings up wild card, and I say, Stefan, you're going to get us in trouble. People are going to start yelling at us. But like, it's one of those where technically they haven't been so far out of it that it's not worth exploring. But what's the number now? Like 6.5? It's bleak. I don't think there's any reason to still be considering it. You'd have to sweep the Reds and then the next team to do it. So yeah, it's very unlikely because they're going to be a team that kind of goes, there it is. There's the meme. It's going to, if you're this sick and you still believe,
you're saying that's Stefan right there?
That might be that. No, it's not him or earnestly, but he does. He talks about, hey, we're 5.5, 6.5.
His last name is also Carey. I mean,
it is. Look, they're an upbeat family. I appreciate the whole family for that. It is just one of those deals where, in theory, there's time to do it, but they're the team that's going to win one, lose one the rest of the way. They're going to finish probably with about 79 wins. It will be interesting to see. Were you among those that had a preseason friendly wager on the win total? I obviously don't delve into that, but I was curious if that's a number that, if you're sweating a number on this.
I'm not sweating the number anymore. I teased it up.
Oh, you went too aggressive.
Yeah, I did. I went 87.
Oh no. 76.5 can still happen, but you know what? It also may die a sad, grisly death if they don't, if they shut down everybody in September. You could see 76 and 86, but I still think they'll win about 79 games. I've lowered that total with the post trade deadline haze that sort of exists. The pitching, Michael is pitching well yesterday. You feel good about that. I'd like to see them give a look to, as we're talking about sort of September stuff. I don't think there's any reason to, expect Palante is going to turn it around. I know they've said they're giving him another start. That surprises me, having covered the Palante game on Tuesday and hearing all these post game. It something tells me he would have been perfectly content to see just about anybody else. But when you think about it, they do need to make a decision on Palante of like, are we going to pay him in ARB2 like $2.5 to $3 million this winter? He's still going to get a slight raise off of his $2 million salary from this year. I think that it makes sense to really say we're learning nothing to send out Palante against AAA pitching. That being said, does it send a right message to give Curtis Taylor a start in September, a 30-year-old journeyman that is not going to have a role in Memphis next year? Like, I think that sends a good message about, hey, if you perform, the Cardinals, when push comes to shove, we'll give you that lifelong dream acknowledged. Like, those things probably matter to players when they think about, hey, do I want to go here or there? It to me is a good message to send. And so I'll be kind of looking for that in September, but otherwise your pitching is kind of what it is. And you're just trying to get to the end at this point. And that's what makes it difficult to expect a run, because there are no strategic pitching decisions being made to find a way to win more games. It's just very difficult to do at this juncture.
Yeah, I had I got plus 370 for 87 or more wins. So,
dude, that's awesome. It could have been plus 3,000 at this point, and I don't think it's coming. Unfortunately,
well, no, it's not.
Preseason,
That's what I'm saying. I'm giving up on that. But at the beginning of the year, I thought, hey,
no, I get it.
81 games is 500. What's 6 more wins?
Yeah. Well, they went 6 in the other direction. It appears.
Yeah, they did
instead because they sold. It is what it is.
So not a no. It is. We'll make it all back this weekend with college football kicking off.
Oh, so let me think. You're probably betting Baylor against Auburn if you like money. You're probably going LSU over Clemson on the road because I don't trust Dabo. What else we got? Take that money back. Hopefully you took the Tigers last night minus 36.5, but I did not, because I just didn't want to have to think about a spread against an FCS team.
I was told to take the under last night. I didn't, but that's.
I would not have advocated under. I just felt like they were going to try to push, but anyway, I can't think about that.
Under this week, you already had a gambling show that you've already done, but I would say under on Texas and the Ohio State.
That seems reasonable. I think the defense is to come out and play well early. Yeah.
Yeah. But hey, check out all of our college football content this weekend on the Southeast Sports Fan Instagram page. and all kinds of Mizzou stuff up as well. Cardinal conversations all weekend long, starting with a post-game show tonight after Cardinals and Reds. And then following that, Illini post-game after they take on the Western Illinois University Leathernecks in
this
Champaign,
one's
Urbana.
personal.
Yeah, it is.
What's the spread on that one?
Rodney Harrison giving a hype video on NBC Sports. I'd love to know if he could even point out where Macomb, Illinois is on a map these days. So,
but since you're originally Chicago area, are you kind of like Illini in your heart? Is there any of that?
No.
You don't care about them? Okay.
I have no alliance to any college football team of any sort. Yeah,
that's true. I know you're a big Mizzou hater, so no, you don't. You're agnostic.
That's not.
No,
they
you're
help
not a
with
hater.
They help with the paycheck now. I'm all about Mizzou these days.
You accuse me of being the biggest Mizzou homer.
Correct.
I don't know what the qualifier was on that in the world, in the city. I don't know what it was, but I think that's probably fair.
Biggest. Yeah, In the St. Louis market, I'm going to say that.
Hey, listen, if you have it tattooed on your back, I think that it just is what it is at a certain point. All right.
That's going to do it for us today. Post-game show and all kinds of content coming your way for for really everything, every single sports that you could think of right here on STL Sports Central. For Brenden Schaeffer, I'm Joe Roderick. Have a great weekend, everybody.